Hi, good morning. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Alexander Knight's our reader today. Alex, what do you got?
First question is coming in this morning from David Brady in New York City, New York. Cloud production at scale. How do we cut costs, reduce complexity, and stay future ready?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, that's a big, huge question. That's almost like a second hour. There are some tools inside of AWS with Cost Explorer where you can go in and granularly see where everything's at. And some of it, you really got to go digging into the weeds to see if these services are truly being utilized. I actually found one that would cost me about $4,000 over the last couple of years. And it was a directory service that we had turned on until I went in there and actually asked, what the heck is this? You know, it was something that we had turned on for workspace, AWS workspace. And so little things like that where you go on these experimentation trails and you don't go back and look to see if you need to turn anything off can cause you a lot of grief later. So whether it be Azure, whether it be Google Cloud, whether it be AWS, they all have a Cost Explorer where you can go back and look at over these budgets. As far as the future, I mean, one of the things that I've learned is if it's an R&D type project is to really break that out into its own P&L, and so that you're holding these guys accountable. Like if it's a Skunkworks type project, like hold these guys accountable for what they're building and don't let it just run away, because it's easy to just give an infinite budget to some project and then years later you look and say, what did you guys actually do? What's the profit number? Because some of this stuff is, if it's just operations, you don't want to just take these operations and starve them because you're fueling something else. And so sometimes some investors need to come in or somebody else needs to fund that project. But security is another big thing as you go about and you look at all these things. There's a huge measure of this needs to be looked at for is it secure, because that could wipe out your entire operation. So we really have a professional come in and look at your stuff at scale. I mean, I know David's playing at a level that a lot of us can't even imagine. I mean, one of the biggest media companies in the world. So I mean, there's professionals that do this stuff for a living that could go in and granularly and look at everything. For a small guy like me that just looks at EC2 instances, domain registers, egress fees, that's another one that'll eat you alive. Is when do you just buy a unit? When do you just buy a computer because you're able to park it at your own facility and your egress fees are already baked into your operation? So there's this whole discussion of CapEx versus OpEx, meaning do you just buy a computer outright and own it and then you can run it as much as you want? Or do you take it into the cloud and then maybe you only need that service every once in a while? So we have something called spot instances, and maybe you only need to spin it up every once in a while. You could save a lot of money, like even 75% off by buying a year or 2 or 3 years and do what we call reserved instance. And so there's all kinds of savings, but this is just such a deep question. And hopefully within 2-3 minutes, I was able to sum it up a little bit, but it's really just such a massive topic. And maybe Alex can dive a little more into it.
Yeah, Alex?
Everything the guy said. So I think that he did great. I think that, one of the things that we've seen Tucker and Jonas and other people, and we've done in Own I Know for the things that we've done, is automate the setup to minimize the amount of time it takes to get everything ready to go. So we don't do things quite as complex as what some of the other folks in the community have done, but we have all that stuff kind of figured out. So you push a button and it all lights up, and we're not spending any time trying to configure anything because we're paying for all of that time. So instead of having a couple days of wringing things out or whatever, it comes up and it's ready to do the thing it needs to do that morning, if we need to, or whenever we're needed to start doing rehearsals. So automation, I think, makes a big difference in making sure that's working. I think that the biggest thing that, that we get into, the most expensive part of this, is failure. And so making sure, like what we try not to do, is cut costs on the power of our servers and everything else, because a lot of times, what gets you is you're in the middle of something and things are not working as smoothly as you'd like. So we actually have a tendency to have a lot more headroom. But really looking at, and exactly what Guy said, looking at when does this make sense to do it with hardware? When does it make sense to do it with the cloud? It's not always, like it doesn't always, so I think that a lot of times we find that 50-60% of the stuff that we're doing still makes sense to do with hardware. And then there's things that make sense that scale, that make sense with the cloud. The other thing to think about as you look at a very large, when you're really looking at costs, and the costs are in millions of dollars, one of the things is to look at is that there's lots of platforms. Right now, a lot of us cobble together. We're going to use VisVector or vMix, or we're going to do this. And that's because we're working with different clients and we're doing different shows, and we need a Swiss Army knife. If you're a big company and you do the same show all the time, it may make sense to build a development team that's just going to use, there's a variety of different platforms that you can use. Zoom as the video source. You can develop what you want it to look like, and this is the way this show is going to work. And you may find that over time, that's actually less expensive to execute than cobbling together all of the different tools that we have here. It's not as flexible, but if you know that you're doing quarterlies, or you know that you're doing town halls, or you're doing those kinds of things, and you know it's going to be the same all the time or the same for the next 2 or 3 years, and you're going to make minor adjustments, you may not need to use off-the-shelf stuff. There's a lot of platforms now for developing your own look and feel, and then you can completely define the interface for how you run it, the workflows, etc.
Go ahead, Samuel.
Specifically using it for video production, then I would look at what's called Cloud Flex. It's a platform that Jonas and different people in our community have been working on. You can spin up instances in AWS without setting up yourself in the AWS portal, and they've got profiles for vMix and Viz and different platforms. So I look at that. It's still a new product, and I haven't used it myself, but it's in the working. So I would definitely look into that if it's video production you're gonna do.
Guy?
Yeah, a couple things that I didn't touch on is looking back at these schematics and seeing what is essential in your build out, like really going back and saying, okay, we went through this mess of putting it together, but how do we streamline it now and then tear it down and able to rebuild it? So some of the tools that they use in CloudFlex, there's something called CloudFormation or Terraform, where we're able to rebuild these instances super, super quick. So when we run one, it installs vMix, it installs NDI tools, it turns on camera permissions, it does all these things that normally would take you 5 hours to do, but we could spin one up in 20 minutes. But these things are also sophisticated in the way that the security groups and everything like that's all dialed in. So like Alex was saying, it saves a ton of time. And the other thing is when you tear these down, they'll leave storage. So you got to remember to delete that storage. Otherwise, in the Acoustic Explorer, you'll see that you're paying for all this high-speed storage because it doesn't. When you delete an instance, a lot of times the EBS fast storage, the SSD drive, essentially stays there. And so that when you actually got to type in DELETE, like delete, it's like, are you sure? And you have to actually type it in to destroy it. So be careful. That was one where Chris Sabato got caught. We went into after hours. He was asking, why am I still getting charged? I deleted my instant. It's like, oh, you didn't check your EBS. And we were able to, Chyron, one of the folks in call them the Cloud Squad, was able to identify where that was. And then the other thing is resiliency and being able to have 2 data centers. So you have one on, let's say, the East Coast and the West Coast. So there's resiliency in case of disaster, of power strikes or nuclear, whatever happens, you have data in 2 different places, or you have infrastructure in 2 places. So when I was doing a show with Grant and Jonas, we had East Coast, West Coast, and we had a Stream Deck button that was just basically like a get out of jail, just like you push it and it would fail over to the other coast. And it happened to where the viewers couldn't even tell because it was so fast. We're talking frames that we could shoot over to an entirely different workflow. So every cut on our Stream Decks was actually happening in 2 data centers, and it was being pushed twice. And that way, when we did the failover, it just happened instantly to where the viewers didn't even know.
We've got a ton of questions today, so make sure if you're in Makana, vote on those questions so that way we can make sure we answer what you want to hear about first. Next question.
Eddie Cochran over in Vieira, Florida, USA is asking, how many of you follow the 3-2-1 rule with client footage?
Go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, the 3-2-1 rule, that's that you have 3 copies of your data on 2 different mediums, and one of them is off-site, like in the cloud. For example. So when I do, I don't do a lot of production like this when I record footage, but when I do, then I always take out the memory cards and save all the files on at least 2 drives, and then when I get home, I will copy it to my NAS and also back it up to the cloud. So it's like I don't follow it like 100% strictly, but I always keep it in mind. and at least have a lot of copies of my data. So if one should fail, or even though two should fail, then you won't lose the data.
Alex?
We work very hard to not keep our client footage. So when we're working with it, it's absolutely, we do a 3-2-1 version of what this looks like. When we're done with it, we want to hand it back with everything else back to our clients. And we tell them we'll hold on to it for 30 days while they make the transfer and make everything work. But we want to get it off of our hands. Now, here's the reality, is we keep a copy of it for a long time unless we're contractually required to get rid of it, which in some cases our clients want us to just delete it. We'll hang on to it. We've had clients come back years, 5 or 6 years after. Do you still have that footage laying around? So, and oftentimes we have. Before we got rid of the archive for PixelCore, you could go back 10 years. We could find anything that we had done in 15 minutes. And that was just on raw hard drives there were 2 copies on a raw hard drive. People say that that's not a very stable thing. We literally didn't lose in that entire, 15 years, we didn't lose a single drive, and we had 2,000 of them, and so we did that, but we didn't tell the clients. I would not keep them that way if we had told the clients that we were accountable for them. What we told the clients is we're accountable for 30 days after we give it to them. And we wanted to get that out from under us as fast as we possibly could.
And remember, when you get to the 1 of 3-2-1, one being off-site, should also in your mind being that one exists in a different location than the other. So if you're on location shooting something and you're leaving a set, so to speak, there's 2 copies of that footage that are traveling in 2 different cars or are on 2 different flights because you can't get it back. Next question.
This one's from Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA, here on our panel. Why did Ross acquire LAMA?
Courtney.
So they'd have something to announce at IBC. I think they did it for the same reason Blackmagic acquired Fairlight. Fairlight was instrumental in audio sampling and recording from the very day one of digital audio recording. And they had a large reputation for audio for recording and sampling. And Blackmagic was known primarily for its video tools and cameras, etc. So, and then with DaVinci Resolve, they needed to add an audio portion without having to reinvent everything. So they acquired somebody who was in the business of doing multi-channel audio workstations. And so they acquired Fairlight. Same thing happened with LAMA. Ross is famous for all of their video switchers, their hardware video switchers, and now they're getting involved within the cloud. And what better person to bring in to acquire than LAMA, who has been doing these cloud-based and software-based audio solutions with their LAMA Mix. And the ability to host this stuff on a cloud server and have multiple people access it for all these cloud and multi-collaborative productions these days. Ross may not necessarily need to roll a truck full of equipment now to do a remote broadcast. They can host it all in the cloud, and they have something to announce at IBC as well.
Alex?
Number one problem with cloud production is audio, in my opinion. Like, it is the hardest thing to do well. It's just very complicated to get the audio paths to really work well and to manage them. LAMA and OnHertz are probably the 2 leaders in this area. So if Ross wanted to dig into this, this is a huge thing to solve. And it really had the choice between those 2 companies, in my opinion. And so they picked LAMA. And so I'm sure, we never know what all the other requirements are when they make those decisions about how it'll integrate with what they have, so on and so forth. But I think that it's a great news for both companies and great news for people doing cloud production to have Ross being able to provide the scale that it has to LAMA's, what LAMA's already built. So it's great.
Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri is asking, besides lower thirds, what else does Chyron encompass?
Courtney.
Well, anything to do with text or graphics superimposed over a video image. Chyron has been around since the dawn of computer-based video imagery and titling for doing lower thirds and crawls at the end of your show, with all the credits crawling. It also does the horizontal crawls, the news tickers, the anything that involves high quality anti-aliased text superimposed with its own alpha channel over a video image. Chyron has been right there and has been a leader in the industry in providing that basically text support for overlaying text and graphics over video. It's used in commercials, everything else where you need to create graphics for inclusion in your video.
Alex?
Yeah, weather, virtual backgrounds, all kinds of channel branding stuff, all the things. So Chyron does an enormous number of things. They're a pretty big booth at NAB. They're doing okay, serving the broadcast market.
Next question.
From the QR code, Scott Pulsifer in Philadelphia asks, I want phantom power into a shotgun mic, output into Dante, but also output into a MixPre for noise assist into the computer for live Zoom calls. How do I get both? Thanks.
Courtney.
Well, if I understand your question correctly, you could just plug the shotgun mic into a mic input on the MixPre 3, which of course the MixPre has phantom power, and it has great preamps, so you got that conquered. It also has a USB audio out for an interface to your computer, so it has stereo out and multi-channel out, I think, depending upon which MixPre you're going to get. Into your computer, the only fly in the ointment there is Dante, and if it's one of the MixPre 3s or MixPre 6, you could just run the unbalanced, I think you can run unbalanced audio into one of these AVIO rack-based little adapters. They have a little terminal strip here. You could take the mini plug out and run it into the line level audio in on one of these and get Dante out into your Dante network. So you could solve all three with just the MixPre 3 and one of those Dante AVIO.
Alex?
Yeah, I think what Courtney said, I think that I do feel like you could just deliver the MixPre via Dante virtual sound card internally into the thing, so you could just have your computer deliver that. Remember, you got to have a chip somewhere, but that could just take that noise assisted version of that and send it out. The other option, of course, is to have some kind of mixer that's going to have you have a mixer that has Dante capability. That might be a little bit more than what you want. The Studio Technologies 205 that I use for my mute actually has Dante, so it could deliver it to Dante as well as pass it through to the MixPre. I pass it through to the MixPre right now, but it could deliver that to Dante as well. So I think that those are a couple different options there. I mean, you could do things like I don't know what the new version of the MM1 is, but you could also Sound Devices makes this little preamp called an MM1. And that'll deliver line output from a mic input. So you put the mic in there, and then you could hook it up to that would give you Dante at least. And then literally with line out, you could split it if you wanted to. So there's a bunch of different ways to manage that.
Jason.
Yeah, the MM1 is the only one with, I believe, a balanced output. For those who have never bought one of these, this means out because it's going out of the Dante interface. If you get the ins, then the arrows are facing the other direction. And this is exactly what Alex was talking about. Get to XLR and then, get an adapter to XLR and then plug it in through the MixPre, which way you need to do it. Or get a Scorpio like Alex does and then use it to mute your microphone.
Alex?
And as Mickey points out, there's only one output from the MM1. I mean, you could put it into some kind of splitter. I don't know if it would make any. I don't know if you add any noise to it. I've never used it for a real signal, like a splitter, into a real signal. We send it out for other things. So one thing that Mickey said that I would highly recommend is do not use an unbalanced connection. So I don't use unbalanced connections anywhere, ever. like it's just like the only place that I have to use unbalanced connections is with guitars and basses, and I'm in the process of eliminating that problem. Like other than attaching it right to where the pedals are, I'm in the process of a mixture of DIs and reamps and everything else of I don't want to deal with running long cables that are unbalanced. It's just so much time.
You can ask questions 24/7 at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. There's nothing to log into, nothing to sign up for. Just go to askofficehours.global, give us your name, give us your question. We'll work it in over the next few shows. Next question.
David Brady in New York City, New York. Aja FS2 versus Blackmagic Design Teranex. Pros and cons of each and functional comparison.
Courtney.
Yes. The Aja is more expensive. It depends on which Blackmagic Design Teranex you're talking about. If you're talking about the AV, which is the full rack mount unit, which is kind of comparison to that guy, it can do the Blackmagic, while the FS2 stands for Frame Synchronizer 2 because it has 2 channels. So, but the Blackmagic is only a single channel, but it does support 4K. So, if you want to look at a comparison between the two, here's kind of a quick comparison. The Aja has dual channels, whereas the Blackmagic AV only has a single channel. The Blackmagic will do 12G SDI, so it'll do 4K, whereas the Aja is only HD, not to 4K. It doesn't support anything above 3G, I think. It has more advanced audio routing. Its 16-channel audio routing is much more versatile audio-wise, the Aja is, than the Blackmagic. It has no legacy input. There's no analog inputs on the Blackmagic, so it's digital only, where I think you do have analog inputs on the Aja. User interface is much more complex on the Aja. The front panel on the Blackmagic is a lot easier to operate. The Blackmagic is about half the price, a little more than half the price of the Aja, but the Aja does handle 2 channels, whereas the Blackmagic only handles 1. And that's basically for live AV. They recommend that projector feeds, etc., for the Blackmagic. And the Aja is used more in broadcasts. It's more of a professional rack mount device than you would see in the Blackmagic. And Blackmagic has been known to have some reliability issues, where the Aja tends to hold up better in the field, supposedly.
Alex?
Yeah, I've owned a lot of both. And so I would say that, I mean, obviously the heavy hitter is Aja. One of the other things is that the audio delay, which we use a lot in both of these, the audio delay in the Aja is much more graceful than the one in the Teranex. And so when you're changing it, it changes by the sample as opposed to, whole milliseconds, and you don't hear any clicking. Like as you turn an FS2 or I have a lot of FS4s now and FS HDRs. When you turn that to line something up, it's much smoother, and you'll hear it as you work through. So you really want to use the interface for the Teranex. I mean, the big thing is we see a lot of Teranexes everywhere. They're a lot less expensive. They're kind of you stack a bunch of them in a truck, or you stack a bunch of them in a kit, and you know that they're lighter, they're cheaper, they're easier to use. So there's a lot of reasons that they have them there. There's a lot of displays that they give us. When we look at the front of it, we kind of know what's happening with the AJA. It's a little more opaque. That's there, but obviously very limited as far as any kind of embedding or de-embedding. I believe that the newer ones, the FS2s, I think did take analog. I think Mickey pointed out 8 channels of analog in. The FS4s and the FS HDRs are AES only, I believe. The other thing is that you can take MADI into at least the FS4s and the FS HDRs, and so that's going to let you pipe that in. If you build a network that is either Dante or MADI and then have a converter to MADI, you can send a bunch of channels into it as well. So those are a bunch of advantages. I mean, if I was going to only get one and it didn't matter what the price was, I'd probably want an FS4. I haven't used an FS2 for a long time, but I would probably want it. But again, the cost of just the in and out of the fiber to get to 12G on let's say an FS HDR, just getting the SFPs for the FS4 or FS HDR is almost the cost of the Teranex. So to get to 12G. So if you're working in 12G, there is definitely a cost difference between them to make that work. But the FS4 and FS, again, the color controls, scaling controls, everything is much higher in the FS series. The one problem that the FS2s had, just as a note, is if you're working with something with a lot of the reason we stopped using FS2s for a long time and we didn't come back to them until we got FSHDRs was because of the way that they deal with color scaling. So when you scale from one thing to another, when you scale down, or when you scaled down or did any kind of deinterlacing or anything else, the scaler was doing what we think is a 4:1:1 conversion internally. And if you had any primary colors, specifically red, you'd see big chunky edges. It made the FS2 unusable for us because we had 2 clients with red logos, and it took us a lot of time. The reason that we started using Teranexes in the pipeline was that the FS2s had a scaling problem with primary colors, and we could not use them because of that. And AJA never responded to us about it, and we just were like, okay. And so for a solid decade, we didn't buy any more FSs until we got into the FS HDRs because we needed them for HDR production.
Next question.
Adi Kokenover in VR, Florida, USA is asking, Adobe is releasing Premiere for mobile free. There's a link to YouTube there.
Courtney?
Yeah, it's to get those kids hooked early on that Adobe Premiere and get them to use into the Adobe universe there. There's a lot of competitors in the, for the influencers out there that are creating TikTok videos. There's CapCut and Chip Clamp and Clip Champ. Chip Clamp, yes. Clamp your chips. Clip Champ in the Windows world. So I think they're just trying to extend their universe out to the handhelds for free. It gives them an introduction to the Adobe universe there of paying a lot of money every month, eventually for the rest of their lives. So it gets them hooked a little earlier. That's what it's for, is to get those kids interested, for those mobile producers and TikTok creators.
Alex?
I think that they're trying to figure it out. The issue that Adobe has is they really focused Premiere on the higher end. They were really going after Hollywood, and we can do movies and we can do all that stuff. And while they were doing that, Apple and Blackmagic went straight at creators. So both of them are spending a lot of time on creator support. And then you also have CapCut and other things that have kind of taken over huge chunks of the industry. And so Adobe kind of went to the small part of the thing thinking that there's a lot of money there, and there's probably not as much money there. And now they're going for the wider end, trying to figure out a way to get back into that market. There's a lot of creators who vision themselves as filmmakers who are using Premiere. They've done this with Adobe Rush. It was a complete failure. No one remembers it. And so they're going to try to do it. I think it's a hard lift. I think that Premiere is complex for most creators, and we definitely see creators using it, but it's clunky, And so the problem that Premiere has, it doesn't really solve, like Resolve solves all the technical problems, but is harder to learn. Final Cut is much faster, but can't do all the technical things that are necessary. But it's much faster to edit. And when you talk to creators, I work with a lot of creators, and a lot of them are still using Final Cut, or they're moving to Resolve. And it also has to do with creators are notoriously stingy and don't want to pay monthly. So Resolve and Final Cut are 2 big winners because they only have to pay for them once, or they don't. In Resolve, most of the stuff that they would need to do is free, and so they look at it through that lens as well. So I think I think that's why they have to release Premiere for free, because the creators aren't going to pay for a subscription for it, And so I don't know what they think they're going to get or where they think that that's going to go. But it's an interesting puzzle. Adobe has not been successful in the creator community by and large, but it'll be interesting to see if they're able to make some movement there.
Yeah, I'm not a Premiere user either, but I do find myself when I'm on my phone, if I wanted to cut together 2 or 3 clips, just something quick and dirty to make a joke to send someone, I always find myself going into an iMovie or going into one of the other apps for the phone that I have to pay a little bit of money for. And the experience just is clunky. I would love it if there was a little bit more pressure on how to make something quick off of your phone so that I can export something out. And then if Adobe's saying it's free, then hopefully it makes other people make it free as well.
And it's hard. I think a lot of it's cultural, and it comes down to very specific features. Like the problem is it's not having an editing package. The thing that is I'm not willing to put it on my phone because I have a lot of concerns around privacy, but CapCut is the big game now. Like it is, and CapCut puts all the features that you want. It's just owned by a Chinese company that wants access to all your photos. And it just kind of like, I don't know if this is a good idea. So like it scares me too much to put it on my phone just because I have a deep distrust for that app. But it is the big game in town. Like it is what a lot of people use, because when you want to build a meme to do exactly what CJ's talking about, you want to do something really quick, you want to do something funny, you want to do those other things there. That's the hard part. Again, it's also mentioned LumaTouch is a great one for the iPad that creators have been using as well. I haven't seen a lot of uptake. Final Cut was released on the iPad. I haven't seen a lot of folks using Final Cut on an iPad or using Resolve. I think partially because unlike LumaTouch, Final Cut and Resolve aren't natively, didn't come natively from a touch experience, and it just doesn't feel like. I opened it up and played with it for a little while, and then I was kind of like, okay, and I went back to using it on the desktop. So I think that's going to be for any of these, and that's I think predictive of where Premiere may have trouble is, when I talk to creators that are doing stuff on their phones, if they're using a product other than CapCut, a lot of them are using iMovie on the phone, or Clips. A couple of them using Clips. It's not super popular, but it's a couple of them that use Clips to do. They figured out some model that works for them. That's the Apple's little thing that I think that they kind of shuffled away. Like it doesn't seem like it was like Rush that didn't really work. But I think that a lot of them, and again, when you talk to them, what they're looking for is the ability to get to the features that you want, that whatever the cool features are right now, and speed. And when I talked to someone about why they use Final Cut over other products, and they were like, well, I don't get paid by the hour. I got paid to get, I'm going to be doing 3 to 4 posts a day. I just need it to be fast. And for them, Final Cut or iMovie were the two things that move fast. And then again, or CapCut.
If you're joining us on YouTube, we appreciate it. But if you're not watching live, you're missing half the show. So we're live every morning, 7 a.m. Pacific in Makana, and that's your chance to ask in real time. You can vote on what gets answered, as I mentioned before, and you can connect with some of the most smart, supportive people in our chat. It is an incredible conversation that happens every single day around the show. There's debates. People give different opinions. So there's a lot more to Office Hours than just watching it. So be a part of it. Head to officehours.global/join. That's officehours.global/join, and I'll see you live tomorrow. Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri asks, Guy, what's on top of your speakers and what acoustic benefits do they provide?
Guy?
All right, I'm not going to pretend to be the expert on this. Somebody else gave these to me, a well-known celebrity in our area. I was doing a studio build-out, and he actually does a little behind the scenes here. So this is Sir Mix-a-Lot, aka Anthony Ray. And if you look at his ceiling, you'll see some of those diffusion panels. And this is an Atmos, I think it's a 7.1 build. And he just had a bunch of extra ones. So the one in particular that you're talking about that's on my speakers is a diffuser, and it'll basically take low and, or not low, but mid and high frequencies and scatter them and break them up so that they're not just for parallel walls. You'll notice that he had them on his ceiling. So there's these ones that are more for high frequencies. And in that video, you'll also notice that he had a bunch of these ones which have foam on the back. So these ones will reflect, but they'll also take in and scatter and break up some of those waves. And I wish Mickey was on. He could probably describe this stuff more. There's the website that actually has, let me show you the web page from Acoustic. So this is what it looks like on their page, where they just say it's a bi-dimensional diffusion panel that provides multi-reflection on both vertical and horizontal planes. So there's a bunch of tech specs as to how the absorption versus diffusion versus scattering acoustic performance handles on the various models that they have. So you can see there's some pretty cool studios like this one here, where they're using those same exact panels up on the ceilings in these 5.1 rooms. So I know I don't have mine placed exactly where I need to, and Alexander's coming down tomorrow. Maybe he'll see this in person and can give me some direction as to where to put all this stuff, because he gave me just cases of this stuff because he had a bunch left over from his studio. So I just said, sure, I'll take it. And when I told him I was building out a home studio, he's like, don't buy any of that stuff. Just I'll give it to you. So he gave me cases of it.
Because you gotta have friends. Alexander?
Oh, I'll just add that they also look pretty as well. But Guy pretty much covered it. I mean, basically what that does is, the problem with a lot of rooms is that they're not built for sound, right? So if you think of maybe a square-shaped room or a rectangular-shaped room with hard surfaces, you get a lot of echo and flutter in that room. And so by having that acoustic diffuser, and you'll notice that if you look at it from the side there, you can see that the blocks are at different heights as well. So that does scatter the sound. And basically, so that what it does is it spreads things out, and so it arrives at different times. And so basically it just evens things out. Now, diffusion typically will keep the overall liveliness of the room. It won't totally deaden it, which is maybe what you want. A lot of times when you're building studios, typically for music production, you don't necessarily want that room to be completely dead sounding. So oftentimes there is a combination of both acoustic absorption and diffusion, and you want some kind of balance where you're really controlling the overall acoustics of that space, but you're not totally sucking the life out of it. Now, if you're building a vocal booth, perhaps, or if you're doing maybe something like voiceover or doing what we do here, you probably don't want any kind of echo or flutter in that room. So acoustic absorption is a different solution. So you got to use the right tool for the job that's required.
And kudos to any company who's concerned about the aesthetics of these things. We've seen a lot of the ones that kind of look cheap or look kind of mundane and industrial in the way that they're just uniform patterns. But when they're aesthetically pleasing, then it lets you do things like put them in conference rooms and put them in home theaters where you need the other people in the house to also sign up to have these things hang on the walls. When it's aesthetically pleasing, then it feels good to everybody. Next question.
This one is a QR code question. We actually have two back-to-back here. The first one is from Paul Blatt in Belgium, asking about live automatic translation. OutClient is looking for a live translation solution for an event where a remote speaker's audio and ideally video is translated live. Does such an AI solution exist? And the next live translation question
they're two different, completely different questions.
Oh, all right, no problem. Let's go with the first one, Alex.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So for this question, it depends. There's some things that are built in. So Zoom has a lot of great translation tools that are built in, and we're going to be doing. By the way, as a reminder, we're hanging out with the Zoom team today, the development team, at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to talk about the Zoom graphics toolkit, or the Liminals graphics toolkit. And so you want to definitely tune in for that. It's not going to be recorded or streamed. This is a private-ish. And I sent out a thing in Discord if you're interested in that. But we're going to be sitting down with them. I think there could be a possibility of taking the translation data and putting it into graphics, and so that'll be something we probably ask them about when we go into this. And so that might be one possibility. The only one that I've seen that's third party that I've actually seen at events being used. Most of the events that I work on do not use. They still use humans, but the one that I've seen that people are starting to use is called Interprify. Interprify, yeah. So Interprify.com, you can obviously see some fairly large brands using it, and this is for specifically these multilingual events. And so I haven't used it myself. I've just seen. I was kind of like, hey, what are you using there? Like one of those, like what's going on there. So that's the one that I've seen being used. It looks like it works fairly effectively, and this is going to be a big future. Like the translation market, it is going to be normal for within the next couple years of every possible event that you can imagine, the board meetings at or the steering meetings at a city, everything to be translated into 60 languages, and it's going to happen in the next couple of years where it's all just translated and it's all pretty darn accurate. It's kind of an amazing thing that we're going to watch as far as it's going to be as close to Star Trek, I think, as we can imagine. The next big thing will be, it's not quite there, but you can see in post, they're able to move the mouth and gather you can already see Apple doing some of it with the voice, or not Apple, sorry, Google, doing it with where they're taking the inflections of the person and translating that audio into the other language, but with all the inflections and with that person's voice or an amalgamation of that. So you're going to get to a point where you're hearing people, you're going to hear their inflections, you're going to hear all that stuff just in another language, and eventually that'll happen in video, and that's all going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years.
Courtney?
Yeah, we know it's available now, but only in the labs. They're kind of afraid to release a lot of it because Microsoft developed VASA 1, which just takes any audio track and within 170 milliseconds, so very low latency, can just take a still photograph of someone and animate their entire face, their head, their neck, everything from just the audio inflection and make it completely believable. They've not released that yet, and there are 11 Labs, of course, makes one, and there's a company called Kudo that specializes in translation, and they have both live translators, like Alex was saying, that you can put in professional interpretation, and they have AI speech translation, where you can take one input and translate it to up to 60 different languages in real time to different outlets, so that can translate the voice into different ones. But I don't think they do video yet, but you could couple it with something like VASA 1 or some of the other. There's another one, a Chinese. Most of this research is coming out of China, so with all the embargoes on exchanging code between China and the United States right now, it's kind of difficult landscape to work in. But the technology is already there. Whether it's going to be converted into usable products because of the problems with guardrails is a question. But once they can develop the guardrails to be sufficiently protective of the propaganda, then I think you'll see products at the market.
Alex?
Yeah, and David Brady points out that this N translate is something that he saw at the AVIT Summit, and he said it was very, very impressive.
And if you want to join us for that Zoom lab today, again, that's 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. If you go to officehours.global/Zoom lab, that's how you're going to join that. It's not broadcast. It's not recorded. So you got to be there if you want to see all the good stuff happening with Zoom Graphics Toolkit. Next question.
Another QR code question coming in from Steve Burns in Ohio. We have been asked to provide translation for conference using Stenomatic. The conference is highly technical, using complex medical cardiology terms. Has AI reached a point yet where it can accurately replace people?
Alex?
I think in this case, maybe not. This is a very specialized field, and we've worked on conferences where they needed translation, and it's not only that we needed a person that could do the medical terms, but a person who understood that type of medicine. And so these are people who are typically medical. They're really expensive. That's why I remember it very clearly, because they are medical. They have medical degrees, or they went through I don't know if they have degrees, but they had a lot of medical training. And then they really understood what they were looking at, because contextually, while things are being talked about, they need to understand what that means in the context of what they're talking about. I don't think that I would not lean on AI to do this yet. Eventually, yes. With enough training, possibly. You're going to want to look for something, but I don't think that it's ready yet. No, that's my opinion.
Next question.
This one's coming in from Lois Richter in Davis, California. There are so many scam apps out now. I don't trust much these days. However, I've seen ads for apps that will clean up old photos so you can more clearly see faces instead of just a blur. Any apps you suggest for this one task?
Alex?
Yeah, the only one that I've seen used, again, and I don't do this that often, so is Remini. So that's this one here. So this is the only one that I've actually, I think they have like you can see it kind of clearing up those things. That, and as far as sharpening things, also Topaz. Topaz is the other one that I've used for sharpening. I haven't used Topaz I've used it for upscaling and removing some blur. I've not used it for touch up. I don't know if it does touch up or not. But what we use it for is adding more frames or taking frames away from video footage for Topaz video. And then the photo is the one that we use to up-res things or to clear up things. But I haven't used it for any touch-up. Remini is what I've seen used for touch-up. But to clarify things and to make them sharper, a lot of us use Topaz.
Courtney.
I seem to be stuck in repeat here, but Nano Banana. Once again, Nano Banana comes to the rescue. This is all the rage now.
What's the resolution limit to Nano Banana? I think it's 1024 by 1024.
I don't know if there is a resolution limit. I've seen it up-reses, and then you can use for cleanup. You can see there's tons of demos online and YouTube for people using it to restore old photographs, and it'll even take an old photograph where half of a face is missing, and there's scratches and everything all over it. It will up-res it and replace the portions that are covered by destruction. It'll even colorize it to either sepia type period coloring or modern vivid coloring. You just type in how you want it converted, and it will do the trick in just a few seconds. So it's free now from Google's AI Studio, I think. So look at that. I think it's called Image 2.5 is the commercial name of it on the Gemini site. So try Nano Banana. It's free. You just upload your photograph and you say, clean this up. And it will clean it up. If it's black and white, it'll keep it in black and white, or you can have it colorize it. And this is primarily for stills. But then there are other tools like Runway that can then take that cleaned up still and convert it to video and make it come alive for you.
Jason?
+1 on Topaz. Like I have actually used it to clarify faces, and it works pretty well.
Additional +1 on Topaz. My grandfather passed away earlier this year, and so the family all got their photos together, and some of them were really early digital photos, and some of them were like pictures taken of a print that was on somebody's kitchen table. Before the services, I took all of the photos into Topaz AI and said, clean this up, defocus this, and had to play with the settings. Sometimes it got a little too aggressive, but it was amazing when the images were cleaned up and then put up on a big screen, how much more powerful it was than something that was a little pixelated. So definitely +1 for Topaz. Next question.
This one's coming in from, look, that's one of my questions. How do I choose the correct X-Rite ColorChecker so I can check color accuracy and work on LUT creation? There's
Jason.
a lot of them.
I was looking for it behind me. I buy spiders for this. I think they're a little bit cheaper, but yeah.
I think he's looking for LUTs though, not necessarily correcting the monitor, but correcting.
Yeah, I'm
footage.
just working on LUT creation. Yeah.
Okay, well, skip me then. Go to Guy.
Guy?
Alexander, if you're coming down here to visit tomorrow, you can just borrow mine. I have this little tiny one. These are like 111 bucks. Yeah, I mean, come on down and bring your camera and you could shoot it. You don't have to buy one. Yeah, they're handy to have. In Resolve, there's only a handful from the pop-up that it'll accept, which is the Datacolor SpiderChecker 24, DSE Labs Chroma Demand, which is like over $1,000, DSE Labs SMPTE, and then there's like 4 different ColorChecker classics video, and the smallest one here is the Passport. And then if you watch this video, you can see how you use this tool to go in there and use the tool to mask around and transform where those colors actually are. And then you can create your LUT that way. So the cheap one, if you just want to buy it, 111 bucks. But the downside of this is if you're on a stage or something like that, it's way too small because your zoom usually can't push in to fill the frame. So if you just need something for you, the Passport will work. But the Chroma on Demand is super nice, and it's huge. It's big, but you got to take care of it. And if you buy one used, because they went out of business, but the used market still has them, but they do have a shelf life. So they fade, and over time, they're just going to not be accurate.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, the shelf life it depends on how much you use it too, and how you treat it. So mine is pretty old, but I feel fine with it because I keep it in its shelf all the time. It's never near the sun. It's always, like there's a bunch of things you can do to keep it, but in general use, guys, right, that over time, especially if you're doing work outside, it is going to fade a little bit to make that actually work. So they have this, I guess, only good for a year or two, but most of us have them for a decade. So it's not so. But the I mean, I also don't take the expiration dates on my vegetables as a guide, not necessarily a rule. So anyway, so the other thing to look at is how you're planning to use these. What I will say is that using the color corrector inside of Resolve will get you close. It will not get you on. Like it just never is quite like if you put that in front of like 6 different cameras or a bunch of different things that you're doing, and you have that color checker used, they're not all going to match. Like they're going to get close. They're going to be much better than it's kind of one of those things. Like if you don't have an expert, they're going to be much better than what you would do if you haven't used Resolve before. So they are an advantage to that, but they're not going to solve that matching problem. Now, what I do use those for is I will take something from I will take the image that I get from my camera, and now first you got to be very careful of setting up the transfer function. So how are you getting, what camera are you starting with, the color space, and where are you going to? You got to get that color space correct, and so then that's going to get you 80% there. And then you're going to go in a node for every correction that you're making. Do not put it all on top of that node. Put in, I'm going to do some exposure control. I'm going to do some color. I'm going to do some saturation. Each one of those operations is its own little world. And you kind of go through that process. And then what you want, so as you make those corrections, you get it to what you want it to look like. You still want that chart, but you also want in that footage a person or something else that's there. And the reason for that is the chart is a thing, but what matters is skin. So skin color is the thing that's going to matter, is how that skin color looks. So you get that to exactly what you want for that camera, but you want that chart there because if you want to match any other camera to that chart, you want them all to look like that. And then again, I've talked about it in the past. I take one chart, I put it over top of the other chart, I set its difference, and I play with it until it turns black. Like these two cameras are set exactly the same way. And I cheat by putting it all through the same set of functions first, and then I just make the fine adjustments to get it close. That's going to get you, especially if you use the same sensor, but this will work. What I'm talking about with that chart will work with many different chart cameras. So you can have different sensors, different cameras, so on and so forth. None of them are going to be perfect if you're not using the same sensor and the same lens. It's hard to nail it perfectly, but you'll get much closer.
Alexander?
Yeah, I already know I messed it up. I tried to create one myself, and I put all the changes on one node. So as you're saying this, I know I already didn't do it properly. And just so you can see what I kind of came up with, and it doesn't look great, but I'll just show you what it ended up looking like. This is what my skin tone's
I saw it there
off.
for a second. Oh, that's I thought I saw it go nuclear there for a second.
So I like a lot more pink now.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the challenge.
Are you sure you haven't been having some of those shrimp from the Walmart down
Yeah,
here?
exactly. There's a whole song about that now.
Staying clear away from it.
If you're finding office hours valuable, there are a couple ways that you can support us. You can like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. That helps. Of course, you can also volunteer. We've got volunteer opportunities both during the show and around it, keeping us organized, keeping us moving forward. And tomorrow after the show, we've got our new volunteer and volunteer meetings. So hang out for that or go to officehours.global/volunteer. Finally, you can contribute to the show financially at officehours.global/donate. We are a nonprofit and 100% volunteer funded, so we appreciate everyone who goes to officehours.global/donate. Next question.
David Brady in New York City, New York is asking, do services like Spotify or Pandora watermark music? Is it possible for them to discover if their services are used outside of the terms of service?
Alex?
No, they don't do it. Some of the brands or labels may do it for pre-releases and so on and so forth, but I don't believe that Spotify or Pandora watermarks their stuff. What I will say is that what I would be very concerned about is if you get caught outside of the TOS and you're working with a large brand, the money is big. So we're very paranoid. We don't worry about the if I'm doing something for something little, I'm not too worried about it. It's small fry. But if I'm working for a large brand, I very quickly go, hey, do we have like written approval for the use of every second that we're playing? Because if someone's lawyer listens to that song in the wrong place, it gets super expensive.
Courtney.
Yeah, well, you may not know if they're watermarking their streams or not, because Spotify or Pandora won't really tell you. And these means of audio watermarking are imperceptible. And it depends on the type of watermarking they're using, whether they survive making digital analog dubs or digital dubs of the audio that's used. If you're an insomniac and you really want to find out about audio watermarking, there's a good white paper that's out there from, I think, is the International Journal of Advanced Computer Science and Applications. This came out in 2024 on audio watermarking, and it's a comprehensive review of all the technologies and all the math involved. So get out your slide rule and figure out how to do the watermarking and whether it's perceptible or imperceptible. Now, they can apply this watermarking to any of these audio things, and it'll be imperceptible to you if they put it in, and they're not going to talk about it. But I think their lawyers will only get involved if you're trying to basically compete with them to provide another streaming service, and you're stealing their content to compete with them. Then the lawyers are going to come after you, and they will probably use that secret watermarking that they've been using secretly for years to sue you.
Alex?
I mean, basically, most of the time, Spotify doesn't care. Like, it's the labels that care, that you're doing this. And so if you're playing it out for a show, like we get requests a lot to, hey, can you play out our Spotify playlist into a stream? And we're like, I don't think that'd be a good idea. I wouldn't. And so that we'll go through it and try to figure that out. Or if you play it in a venue, if the venue's got BMI and ASCAP, you're probably okay. But it's Spotify and Pandora are not chasing people down over this. It's not their TOS. It's the labels who want to make sure that you're not using their music.
Next question.
Paul Valhos in Austin, Texas. Smallrig has a boatload of new products which stand out to you as useful in your pro media endeavors.
Guy?
Yeah, I looked at this stuff. It's pretty junky. I don't really see nothing little tiny tripod, little crappy tripod. This may be interesting, a V-mount battery plate kit version 3, but these other things, there's only like 8 items on here. This one's for cyclists. This one's a knockoff of something else that I already have. So I don't know. This is junk to me.
Alex?
They are, let's see if we look at this, there's like I don't know, the new one that I hit at least is a pretty big one here. There is a kind of a view more, a lot of these are solving, specific problems here. This is a cable that I probably need because the one that I bought broke, not from Smallrig, from somebody else. I have a lot of Smallrig rigs for my cameras, not this one specifically. I actually have this arm right here, right next to me. So the thing is that they are, Smallrig has become very hyper focused on lots of little things that someone's making a request for, and they're finding relatively cost effective ways to make that work. The macro photography LED light is actually something that I'm interested in. I'm dabbling in macro photography, and a lot of this kind of stuff is super expensive. So the thing that I think is interesting overall, whether it's Smallrig or others, is as you're looking at this ecosystem that's getting served by all of these companies for the creator ecosystem, and it just is making all of these things easier to make good content. And I think that is, again, there's this YouTube world and then very high-end film / high-end streaming world. And I think that the space between those two is not a place that I would want to do production anymore, because the two of them are getting so much support.
They had a cage for an Osmo on there for the Osmo 3. Yeah. So I think about, okay, if you were doing behind the scenes or one of those, like where they put a Insta360 on the bottom of the Steadicam rig for Severance, for things like that, to be able to integrate it. What I am really interested in, though, is for $18.99, we've got the MagSafe compatible phone mount. Now that the Google phones and the Apple phones are both using the same magnet charging, anywhere you have a piece of metal, you now have a place to mount your phone, which if you, golf carts, forklifts, anytime you have a big,
one of the things that Jack Cannon was pointing out is that that he uses AirTags with him, and I was like, man, it'd be great if they started building like a little place that you could slide an AirTag in. That would be really cool to be able to put that in there. I will say that Smallrig, they're doing what we've saw a lot of other companies do over time, which is that they started off with stuff that was barely worth buying. I will say that as someone who, what happened was I bought one Smallrig thing, and then I bought things for it, and then you kind of have like a system. So I have a lot of Smallrig stuff because I didn't want to try to figure out if all the bolts lined up or everything else was there. They all kind of fit together. So you're kind of in an ecosystem at that point. So until I decide I'm going to spend thousands of dollars to go to a new ecosystem, I use a lot of Smallrig stuff. And one of the things that I've noticed, and Jack said that they did integrate. I'm sorry, I thought that would be cool. I didn't realize they actually did put something in for.
Oh, it exists. I have them on my 6 case.
Okay, that's really cool. Anyway, what I have noticed is Smallrig's doing what a lot of companies did. You have to be careful of looking at where they were a couple of years ago. Only about a year ago, they started turning things up. And so the build quality on a lot of the stuff is dramatically better. It's not, is it as good as Blue Condor or Condor Blue or whatever? No. It is, but it cut that distance dramatically without dramatically increasing the price. So that's what we're seeing as a regular thing. Things start off junky, and then they suddenly, as they make more money, they just start bringing up the quality of all the components because they know what the quality looks like. They just go buy the wooden camera stuff and take it apart and look at it and then figure out how to make it for less.
Thank you, everyone, for being a part of our show today, to our panel for coming and sharing your expertise, your life experience. It's always a privilege to spend an hour getting smarter with you. To our back-end crew, keeps the show running every single day, not only during the show, but around it. You are the foundation of what we do. We cannot do it without you. And also to our producers, we had so many questions today. We had to send some back. So if you asked in Makana, they'll be in your notes. If you asked via the QR code, we'll start in again on those on Monday. If we had to go around and do this in person, that would be the Tulalip Traversal. To answer all these questions would have taken 26,000 miles. That's 42,000 kilometers, 206 million bananas for scale. We'll see you in after hours.
Nano banana for scale.
Banana.
1 billion nano bananas.
Yeah, exactly. I think we might have to add one. It's like 450 million bananas. 450 billion nano bananas.
Tiny nano banana for scale.
Tips the scales, yes.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
See ya.